It happened during the busiest hour of the day, lunch rush at Sonny's Diner, a small roadside restaurant in upstate New York where the coffee was always hot and the customers came with louder voices than tips. Maisie stood frozen near table 6, her notepad shaking in her hands. A group of customers were laughing, loudly, at her. "Hey, you forgot my order, Scarface," one of them jeered, a smirking young guy in a baseball cap. The entire table erupted in laughter. Others in the diner turned their heads. Some chuckled. A few looked away awkwardly. Maisie could feel her face burning, not just from the words, but from the eyes. Everyone was staring at the long scar that ran from her left cheekbone down to her jaw. Deep, angry, and impossible to hide. Her hands clenched the notepad tighter. One of the women at the table leaned toward her, phone in hand. "Smile for a selfie, sweetheart. You'd go viral on ugliest waitress alive." The guy in the cap added, "No wonder she works here. No one else would hire her looking like that." Maisie stood perfectly still. She didn't cry. Not yet. But her heart twisted. She opened her mouth to speak, but couldn't. And just when she thought it couldn't get worse, a loud, expensive-looking car pulled up outside. The door to the diner opened. And in walked a man in an ash-gray suit, with sleek hair and the confidence of someone who could buy the entire block if he wanted. The crowd quieted for a moment, turning their attention to the stranger. He looked around the diner, then stopped. His eyes landed directly on Maisie. And then he walked straight toward her. Everyone watched. Even the ones who had been laughing. Maisie took a step back, confused and humiliated, but before she could escape, the man reached out gently and placed his hand on her shoulder. And said 5 words no one expected. "I've been looking for you." Maisie's heart jumped. The crowd gasped. The guy in the cap's mouth dropped open. And that's when everything changed. Maisie couldn't move. She stood frozen under the man's hand, the burn of embarrassment still stinging her skin, the echoes of laughter still ringing in her ears. She blinked up at the stranger in the ash-gray suit. His expression was soft, calm. Not pitying, just gentle. "You've got the wrong person," she said quickly, her voice barely a whisper. But he didn't step back. Instead, he looked at the table that had humiliated her. "Is that how you treat someone who shows up every day just to do her job?" Silence. The guy in the cap fumbled with his straw. "Hey, man, it was just a joke." The man raised a hand. "Apologize." Nobody moved. He turned to Maisie. "Do you want them to apologize?" Maisie glanced at the faces in the room. The girl with the phone looked away. The rest stared at their plates like they hadn't laughed seconds ago. "No," Maisie said, her voice suddenly firmer. "They're not worth it." The man nodded. "I agree." Then, turning to the diner manager, "We'll take a booth. Somewhere private." The manager, a heavy-set man who usually never noticed Maisie unless she was late clocking in, scrambled forward. "Why yes, of course. Right this way, sir." The stranger placed a light hand on Maisie's back. "You coming?" Maisie hesitated. Then followed. 15 minutes later. Maisie sat across from him in the corner booth, still trying to wrap her head around what was happening. She studied him while he glanced over the menu. His suit was perfectly fitted. His watch sparkled. But more than that, he didn't look at her scar. Not once. Finally, he set the menu down. "Maisie, right?" he said. She blinked. "How do you know my name?" The man smiled. "Because I've been watching this diner for the past week." Her brows knit in confusion. "What? Why?" He extended his hand. "Landon Hale, CEO of Hale Tech." Maisie's jaw dropped. "Hale Tech? The billion-dollar company that made smart tablets, VR tech, and half the apps everyone used on their phones. You're joking. I'm not, he said. I'm here on business. We're building a research campus about 2 miles from here. Quiet project. No press. But I like to know the communities we move into. Maisie stared at him. Okay, but why are you sitting with me? He leaned forward slightly, his tone more serious now. Because when I came in 3 days ago for coffee, I saw how you were treated. And again the next day. And again today. I saw someone who shows up with her hair tied back, working double shifts, taking insults without breaking. I saw someone who deserves more. Maisie's lips trembled. She tried to keep her guard up. You don't know me. Then let me, he said. She looked down at her hands. People only see the scar. I see someone who didn't let it stop her. Maisie bit the inside of her cheek, fighting the tears building behind her eyes. No one had ever said something like that to her before. It had been a rainy evening when the accident happened. Maisie was walking home from her second job, umbrella flipping in the wind. A drunk driver came flying around the corner. She didn't even see the car until the headlights were inches from her face. When she woke up in the hospital, the left side of her face felt like fire. Her cheek was stitched in 3 layers. The doctors said she was lucky to be alive. She didn't feel lucky. She felt ruined. Since then, people stared. Whispered. Commented. Customers complained. One even left a note that read, "You should wear a mask. You're ruining appetites." Maisie never fought back. She just worked. Because she had rent to pay. And nobody cared about a waitress's feelings. Until now. Back at the booth. Maisie finally asked, "Why are you really here?" Landon paused. Then reached into his jacket pocket. He pulled out a white envelope and slid it across the table. She opened it. Inside was a job offer. Executive Office Assistant, Hale Tech Campus, Upstate Division. Her name was printed at the top. "I don't need a handout," she said quickly. Landon smiled. "It's not. I'm offering you the position because I believe in you. You're sharp. You observe everything around you. I've seen you fix things behind the counter, correct wrong orders, calm angry customers. You're everything I want in someone running my executive office." Maisie's throat dried up. "I don't even have a college degree. Some of the best people I know never stepped into a classroom. But they showed up. And they worked. Like you." She looked at him. "Why are you being so kind to me?" Landon leaned back and said, "Because I know what it feels like to be seen for your worst day instead of your best self." Maisie was quiet. The scar on her face didn't ache as much anymore. But just as hope started to rise in her heart. The front door of the diner slammed open. A woman in a sharp navy suit walked in, heels clicking on the tile. She looked directly at Landon and then at Maisie. "There you are," the woman snapped. "You're supposed to be in Boston today." Landon's expression shifted. Maisie's heart sank. "Who's that?" she asked softly. The woman stepped forward before he could answer. "I'm Celeste. Landon's fiancée." Maisie felt her whole body freeze. "Fiancée?" Maisie's pulse quickened as Celeste's eyes narrowed, fixing her with a cold stare. The sudden shift in the room was like an icy breeze. It was as if the warmth Landon had given her, just moments before, had been snatched away. Celeste stood there, arms crossed, her sharp heels clicking on the floor with every step she took. She was the picture of perfection, her tailored navy suit, her perfectly styled hair, and the gleam of a diamond ring on her finger that Maisie had missed until now. Landon didn't seem fazed, but Maisie could see the tension in his jaw. "This is Maisie," Landon said slowly, gesturing toward her. "Maisie, this is Celeste. She's, from my company. Maisie nodded, trying to stay calm. Hi. Celeste barely glanced at Maisie, her gaze fixated on Landon. You're supposed to be in Boston, Landon. The investors are waiting. The team has been calling for hours. Landon stood up, his expression tense. I know. But there's something important I need to handle here first. Celeste's eyes flicked back to Maisie, and there was something in her gaze that felt like a quiet accusation. Maisie could feel herself shrinking under the weight of it. Landon stepped closer to Celeste, lowering his voice. We'll handle this, Celeste. Just give me a moment. Celeste didn't answer immediately. She stood there, arms crossed, eyes flicking between them, and then turned to leave, her heels clicking sharply against the floor. As she reached the door, she turned back, her voice colder than ice. Make sure you remember who you're supposed to be with, Landon, she said, a faint smile playing at the corner of her lips, but it didn't reach her eyes. The door slammed shut behind her. Maisie couldn't breathe for a moment. Landon let out a slow exhale, his eyes now softer as he turned back to her. I'm sorry about that. She's, a lot. Maisie swallowed hard. She didn't know what hurt more, the coldness of Celeste's words or the weight of the situation she was suddenly in. Celeste's words echoed in her mind, make sure you remember who you're supposed to be with. Maisie clenched her fists on the table. I didn't know I was stepping into anything, she said softly. I didn't ask for any of this. Landon hesitated for a moment, then reached across the table. You don't have to. But Maisie, I came here because I saw something in you. I've never met anyone like you before. You're strong, more than you even realize. Maisie looked down at her hands. They were trembling. Her scar, the one that everyone saw before they saw her, suddenly felt like it was burning her skin. She thought about Celeste's cold gaze. About how easily she had dismissed her, just like everyone else. I don't need someone to come here and pity me, Maisie said, her voice wavering. I don't need a rich guy to swoop in and save the day. I've been saving myself just fine. Landon's expression faltered for a moment, but he didn't back away. I'm not here to pity you. I don't need you to save me, Maisie. I need you to see me. Maisie's eyes flickered up, searching his face, but all she saw was sincerity. For a moment, she wanted to believe him. But the truth was, she had seen too many people come into her life, say nice things, and then leave, like her parents who'd promised her the world, only to walk away. I don't know how to deal with this, she whispered. Landon leaned back in his chair. I get it. But I'm not going anywhere. Not until you've heard what I have to say. Back in the diner's kitchen. Maisie was supposed to be back at work. But all she could think about was the conversation with Landon, the unexpected intrusion of Celeste, and the mess she had just found herself in. As she grabbed a tray to take back to the dining room, one of the other waitresses, Angie, sidled up next to her. Angie was the one person who had been kind to Maisie from the beginning. Everything okay? Angie asked, giving her a concerned look. You looked like you were about to faint when you walked past just now. Maisie shook her head, forcing a smile. I'm fine. Just, stuff. Angie raised an eyebrow. Stuff? Or Billionaire CEO stuff? Maisie paused, a laugh almost escaping her lips at Angie's bluntness. How do you know about that? Girl, everyone in town knows who Landon Hale is. You think we don't hear about the big shots who come in here, looking for a bite to eat? Angie leaned in closer. What's going on, Maisie? Maisie stared at the tray she was holding, her fingers trembling. I don't know, Angie. He sat with me, talked to me like I wasn't just this. She gestured to her face. He saw me. And for a second, I thought maybe he could see me for who I am. Angie smiled, but it was a sad smile. You deserve that. And more. Maisie shook her head, her thoughts racing. But then Celeste shows up, and it's like the whole world just shifted. I'm nothing more than someone who works at a diner to them, Angie. A waitress. Angie put a comforting hand on her shoulder. That's not true. If anyone deserves more, it's you. Maisie didn't respond. She couldn't find the words. She could still feel Celeste's eyes on her. Feel the weight of her words hanging over her like a storm cloud. Could she trust Landon? Or was this just another fantasy that would crumble once reality hit? Meanwhile, outside the diner, Landon stood by the door, watching Maisie through the glass. He didn't know how to explain it. He didn't know why he was still here, so far away from his work, from his life. But every time he saw Maisie, he saw something different, a quiet strength, a kind of resilience that was rare. And he knew, without a doubt, that he couldn't let this slip away. The thought of losing her to someone like Celeste made his stomach churn. He had to make her see that this wasn't just some fleeting moment. He had to make her understand that he meant what he said. But how? Maisie didn't sleep that night. She lay awake on the old couch in her tiny apartment above the laundromat, staring at the water-stained ceiling. The events of the day looped over and over in her mind, Landon's kind words, the cruel laughter at the diner, Celeste's arrival, and the job offer that now sat crumpled in her bag like it was too good to be real. A part of her wanted to believe Landon. But another part of her, the part that had learned to expect disappointment, kept whispering, this can't be real. It never is. The next morning, Maisie returned to Sunny's diner, hoping to quietly blend into the background and go about her shift. But as soon as she walked in, whispers followed her like shadows. Did you hear? The Scar girl's got a billionaire chasing her now. I bet it's just a publicity stunt. Why would someone like him want someone like her? Maisie kept her head down. She scrubbed tables, refilled coffee, delivered pancakes with a shaky smile. But inside, she felt like she was crumbling. Then, just after noon, the door chimed again. It was Landon. He didn't come in with flashy suits or loud confidence this time. He wore a simple white shirt, sleeves rolled up, and jeans. He looked like any regular customer, except his eyes scanned the room for one person only. Maisie. She was wiping a table when he approached. Can we talk? He asked gently. She hesitated, then nodded and led him out the back door, into the small alley where employees took breaks. It smelled like coffee grounds and old rain, but it was quiet. He turned to her. I haven't stopped thinking about you. Maisie folded her arms. You didn't tell me you were engaged. I'm not, Landon said firmly. Celeste and I ended a long time ago. But she didn't want it to be over. She's been hanging around, showing up where she doesn't belong. Maisie looked away. Why would she lie about that? Because she knows I'm serious about you. The words made her heart skip, but she shook her head. You don't know me. I'm just some girl in a diner. I didn't go to college. I don't have connections. I've got a giant scar on my face and debt I can't pay off. What could someone like you possibly see in me? Landon took a step closer. I see the girl who got up after an accident and didn't stop moving. The girl who works 12-hour shifts and still offers smiles to people who don't deserve them. The girl who didn't break when people laughed in her face. He reached out and gently brushed her hair behind her ear, letting his fingers trace the edge of her scar, not with disgust, but with reverence. This scar isn't something to hide, he whispered. It's proof you survived. And it's the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. Maisie's breath hitched. She wanted to believe him. But fear clung to her like fog. What if this is just temporary, she asked, barely audible. What if you change your mind? Landon's expression didn't waver. Then give me a chance to prove I won't. Later that day, Maisie stood in the kitchen with Angie, her hands still shaking. He wants me to go with him, she whispered. To where? Angie asked. To the Hail Tech event. Tonight. He said he wants to introduce me, as his guest. Angie's eyes widened. Are you going? Maisie bit her lip. What if they laugh at me? What if they treat me like those customers do? Like I don't belong? Angie stepped forward and grabbed her hands. Maisie, you do belong. You've always belonged. You just needed someone to remind you. That evening. For the first time in over a year, Maisie wore something that wasn't a diner uniform. Angie helped her do her hair and loaned her a soft blue dress that brought out the brightness in her eyes. The scar still showed, but Maisie didn't try to hide it. When Landon arrived to pick her up, his breath caught the moment he saw her. You look breathtaking, he said. She smiled. Don't expect me to be good at fancy parties. I don't want fancy. I want you. They rode in silence, fingers brushing in the back seat of the black car, the city light stretching into the night like a blanket of stars. The Hail Tech event. The ballroom buzzed with New York's finest, investors, tech giants, socialites, and media. Cameras flashed. Music played softly. Everyone wore designer gowns and perfectly pressed suits. And then Maisie walked in on Landon's arm. The room quieted. Heads turned. Whispers rose like steam. Who is she? What's on her face? Is she his assistant? A PR stunt? Maisie's shoulders tensed. But Landon didn't flinch. He leaned down and whispered in her ear, "Ready?" She nodded. He led her to the stage where he was expected to give his annual speech. She stood off to the side as he took the mic, the room full of powerful people staring. And then, he said something no one expected. I was going to talk about tech tonight. About the future. But something else matters more. He turned to Maisie. This is Maisie. And she's the bravest person I know. A ripple of shock passed through the crowd. She was humiliated in public. Mocked for her appearance. Looked down on because of where she worked. But she kept going. That is strength. That is resilience. That is the future. Maisie's heart pounded. And just as the audience began to process what was happening, a familiar voice cut through the crowd. She's a waitress, Landon. Everyone turned. It was Celeste, her tone sharp, her face twisted in disbelief. You're going to throw away everything for a nobody? Maisie stood frozen. The spotlight now fully on her. Every eye watching. Every breath held. Maisie stood under the glare of 100 lights. Her heart thundered in her chest, louder than the gasps and murmurs spreading across the grand ballroom. Celeste stood with her arms crossed, her words hanging in the air like poison. You're going to throw away everything for a nobody? Landon didn't flinch. Instead, he looked out over the room filled with CEOs, press, investors, people who had known him only as a powerful name. A figurehead. A brand. Not as a man. Celeste, he said calmly, I built a company from the ground up. I know how to recognize value when I see it. He turned to Maisie. And she's the most valuable thing I've found in a long time. The room held its breath. Celeste scoffed. You're out of your mind. She's not one of us. She doesn't belong here. Maisie stepped forward then. Tears shimmered in her eyes, not from sadness, but from something new. Courage. She faced the crowd, her voice steady even as her hands trembled. You're right, she said, locking eyes with Celeste. I don't belong here. I'm not rich. I don't have a fancy education. I serve coffee. I sweep floors. I've been laughed at, pointed at, and judged by strangers my entire life because of this scar. She touched her face gently. But you know what? That scar saved me. It taught me to keep going when life tried to break me. It reminded me I'm still standing. The room was dead silent. Maisie turned to the crowd. Maybe I'm not what you expected. But I'm not a nobody. I'm a fighter. And I've learned to love myself when no one else would. Landon smiled. People began to nod. Some clapped, first softly, then louder. One woman dabbed tears from her eyes. Celeste's face flushed with fury. She spun on her heel and stormed out of the ballroom, the click of her heels drowned by a rising applause. Maisie turned to Landon, her eyes wide. Did that really just happen? He took her hand. You did that. A week later. Back at Sunny's diner, things had changed. Maisie had given her 2 weeks' notice, but not before word spread through town about the billionaire who called a waitress the bravest woman he knew. The same customers who once mocked her now left generous tips, kind smiles, and even apologies. Angie hugged her tightly behind the counter. You've got guts, girl. I'm proud of you. Maisie smiled. I'm just getting started. That night, Landon waited for her under the peach-colored sunset, outside the new Hailtech Community Center being built just a few blocks from the diner. He held out a key. To your new office, he said. Maisie stared at it, overwhelmed. You were serious? He nodded. You'll help oversee our rural outreach program. And when you're ready, I'll help you go back to school. No strings attached. Maisie took the key slowly, fingers brushing his. You changed my life, she whispered. Landon stepped closer, gently tucking a strand of hair behind her ear. No. You changed mine. Their eyes met. No more pretending. No more hiding. And under that same sky where she once felt invisible, Maisie leaned into the man who had seen past her scar, past her pain, and loved the woman behind it. They kissed. Not a movie kiss. A real one. Messy. Brave. Honest. 1 year later. Maisie stood in front of a crowd, this time as a guest speaker at a women's empowerment seminar. She wore a sleek blue suit. Her scars still showed, and she didn't cover it with makeup. I was once called ugly in front of a room full of people, she said. Now I run programs that help women find jobs, education, and hope. If you take anything from my story, let it be this. She paused. Then smiled. Don't wait for someone to save you. Stand up. Speak up. And when the world laughs at your scars, wear them like armor. The crowd erupted in cheers. And just off stage, Landon stood watching her proudly, hands in his pockets, heart full. Because the waitress they once laughed at, had become a woman the world would never forget. If you like this story, comment, share and subscribe to our channel for more interesting stories.